Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Merry Christmas to all who celebrate. Today is the next video in my series of Avatar: The Last Airbender Commander deck techs. The Avatar set has a huge number of legendary creatures, so I wanted to showcase some of my favorite commander options from among them. I'm releasing a new Avatar Commander deck every Thursday through mid-January when the Lorwyn set drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. So if you have a request for a specific Avatar Commander you'd like to see me build, or a way you want to see me build them, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is Iroh T. Master. Uncle Iroh is a hard character to dislike, a firebending master and former general who had a change of heart after the death of his son. Throughout the series, he's a mentor and father figure to Zuko, as well as a source of wisdom and advice for practically every other major character at one point or another. In this card, we see him during his time as proprietor of the Jasmine Dragon Tea Shop, serving the best tea in Ba Sing Se. This is a dream come true for Iroh, best summarized with his own words: follow your passion and life will reward you. I'm excited to share what I put together for this version of Iroh, but before we get started, let's take a look at my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why they're so cool and why I put them at the head of my deck, so I take 30 cards and put it toward whatever the card asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go toward supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none, but I almost always keep to my floor of 38 lands so I can make sure, as much as possible, I can hit my land drops and I can cast my spells. So let's talk about our commander. Iroh T. Master is a 2/2 legendary human citizen ally for 1 a red and a white. It says when Iroh enters, we create a food token, and at the beginning of combat on our turn, we may have target opponent gain control of target permanent we control. When we do, we make a 1/1 white ally creature token, and we put a number of counters on that token equal to the number of permanents that we own that our opponents control. So we want to try and give our things away, and Iroh even comes with something we can give away from the very start in the form of a little cup of tea. So the scene pictured here looks to me like the day that Iroh finally opens the Jasmine Dragon for business. This is a special moment for him, but not just because of the tea shop. It comes after Zuko, who he loves like a son, has just overcome a terrible spiritual sickness, and who seems to have finally chosen the life of peace and prosperity that his uncle has advocated for so long. And he's chosen it with his uncle. Iroh is honored and thrilled at Zuko's maturity and serenity, and he's eager to share his gifts with the world. Anyone who's watched the series loves this moment. It's Iroh getting what he's wanted for his nephew for so long. Their future is full of promise and hope, and, of course, plenty of tea. As Zuko tells him, he deserves it. And getting to see someone so good finally receive the fruits of their labors is cathartic in ways we don't always get to experience because so few stories have a character like Iroh. I have another Iroh quote, however, to serve as a reminder of his dignity and integrity even in the presence of a foe. It's Book 1, and Zuko has just defeated Commander Zhao in an Agni Kai. Frustrated and shamed, Zhao launches a cowardly firebending blast at Zuko's turned back. Iroh dissipates the gout of flame like it's nothing, tossing Zhao into the dirt as he counsels Zuko not to retaliate and thereby taint his victory. Then Iroh turns back and says, "So this is how the great Commander Zhao acts in defeat? Disgraceful. Even in exile, my nephew is more honorable than you. Thanks again for the tea. It was delicious." Iroh gives everyone exactly what they need. Zuko needed to take the W, so Iroh gives him the reminder he requires. Zhao needed to be put in his place, and Iroh puts a bow on him. As for Iroh himself, he needs to express his gratitude, and he does so graciously, even when, in the same breath, he's practically canonized Zhao's loss of face. Iroh is the Dragon of the West for a reason, and no matter how kindly and gentle he is, we can count on him to dish it out when someone else needs to take it. So our seasonal deck is appropriate to Iroh's sense of giving. We have more than 35 cards that either serve as gifts for Iroh to give away, or that invoke the spirit of giving itself. It's a good time of year for donations, so we have plenty of ways to give our goodies to our friends, allow them to draw cards or make tokens, or let them recast their spells for, let's say, extra value. We're all about sharing, so we love seeing our permanents get passed around the table, and since we know our opponents will want to get in on the fun as well, we're able to facilitate that by forcing or encouraging them to make gifts of their own. And for those players who may deserve a bit of coal in their stockings, we also have a few trinkets we'll want them to have, even if they aren't glad to receive them. Our strategy is about building up value on every playmat at the table. We spend the game sending off more cards than Hallmark, and we make more friends and allies each time we do. We can play things politically, or just play favorites. It's play for us either way. Before long, our opponents are wrapped up more than the gifts that we give. Their wrists bound with ribbons and sellotape, their trees teetering atop the boxes we've wrapped, and their own game plans buried by our generosity. They can shake the boxes all they want, but we're in charge of this gift exchange. All they can do is sit, sip their tea, and listen as the Grand Lotus gives them their benediction. May their days be merry and bright, and may their tea, lotus, and elephant be white. You'll enjoy this deck if you like ho-ho-hoing your way through the fun game actions and silly board states it creates, or if you just want to share your holiday cheer with your friends, whether they like it or not. So as usual, this Moxfield list we're going through today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will find a considering section. A bunch of cards in that section are ones that I considered putting into the deck, and ultimately didn't, but it's a good place to start if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you want to go with a different focus than I did in this deck, or if you just need a starting place for building your own Iroh Tea-Master deck. So we're going to start with a few sections that all seem similar, but work a little differently. We're going to start talking about our gifts. We've got 26 cards in here, but we also have a giving section, and we also have a donate section. So we've got a lot of things going on, and I'll explain the differences with them, or between them, as we get to them. The gifts section is a section full of cards that are good for us, or good for us to give away, but all of these cards are permanents that we want Iroh to give to our opponents with his beginning of combat trigger. We're going to start with Curse of Opulence, featuring the unluckiest Planeswalker. If you have an interest in hearing about these curses and how this one Planeswalker is on all of them, take a look at the Scryfall Magic Wiki. It's really cool. Anyway, Curse of Opulence is a single red mana for an enchantment aura curse that enchants a player. Whenever the enchanted player is attacked, we make a gold token, and each opponent attacking that player does the same. A gold token is the same thing as a treasure, but it does not require tapping to sacrifice it. So all we have to do is sacrifice it, and we add 1 mana of any color. So the idea here is we enchant a player, maybe opponent A, and then whenever anyone attacks opponent A, whoever's attacking them makes a gold token, and so do we. So we can enchant opponent A, and then if we attack opponent A, we make 2 gold tokens, because it's, or rather, we won't actually make a gold token, a second one, because we're not an opponent of our own. However, if we give a Curse of Opulence to opponent B, let's say, then whenever opponent A is attacked, because that selection is still locked in, opponent B will make a gold token, and everyone who's attacking opponent A will as well. Which means we can attack opponent A and make a gold token because we are an opponent of the controlling player, which is now opponent B. So a little bit fun to make this work. We can, if we want to, cast Curse of Opulence, enchanting ourselves. That's kind of silly to do, but we can. But yeah, it's fun to be able to pass this around, and in the spirit of giving, make sure that everyone is able to make gold as long as they're willing to attack whatever player we've enchanted. Next is Custody Battle from Onslaught. This card is so funny. For 1 and a red, we get an aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature has, at the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent gains control of this creature unless you sacrifice a land. So it seems like this is bad, and it is, but not for us. Because for one thing, it says enchant creature. So we don't have to enchant our own creature with it. What we do is we take Custody Battle and we put it on the biggest, scariest creature on the battlefield, or maybe one of our opponent's commanders. Probably a commander is a good idea. Maybe opponent A has a scary commander, well, we enchant it with the Custody Battle. So we control Custody Battle, but they control their creature. And then we go to combat, and our commander triggers, and we can give control of custody battle away to opponent B. Opponent B now controls custody battle, which is enchanting opponent A's commander, and custody battle has left our control. It is now a permanent that we own but an opponent controls, and when it's opponent B's turn, they have an upkeep trigger that will trigger... Actually, no. It's opponent A that has the upkeep trigger. It's so confusing. So, at the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent gains control of this creature unless you sacrifice a land, is something that opponent A's commander now has. So, opponent A will go to their upkeep, they'll have this trigger, and they'll have to give away their commander or sacrifice a land. It doesn't matter to us that Custody Battle's controller is not us. This is still going to be on that commander as long as they haven't removed it or haven't blinked or lost their commander somehow. So maybe they give that control of a creature away, or maybe they have to sacrifice a land. That's not much fun for them, but that's what a Custody Battle does for us. It makes everyone unhappy. So yeah, giving away Custody Battle is a great example of things we can do in this deck where whoever controls the permanent we're giving away doesn't really matter. It's helping everyone, or helping everyone but one person, particularly the person who controls the enchanted creature. So next is Darksteel Mutation. Similar principle here. 1 and a white for an aura that enchants a creature. So we enchant probably someone's commander or someone's big, scary, powerful creature. And it says, enchanted creature is an insect artifact creature with base power and toughness 0/1 and has indestructible, and it loses all other abilities, card types, and creature types. It is infinitely powerless. I love this flavor text. So essentially, we make it so an opponent's commander, let's say we're picking on opponent C this time, opponent C's commander is now a 0/1 with indestructible, so they can't destroy it, they can't, use it to block and just let it die that way. It's going to block pretty well unless it's blocking a trampler. They can sacrifice it, of course, they could bounce it, they could have it exiled. Lots of different ways for them to get their commander back into the command zone. But Darksteel Mutation makes it so it's pretty unlikely for it to be destroyed, and it's just going to sit there not being able to do much for them in the meantime. If we then give away control of Darksteel Mutation, it doesn't matter who we give it to. We can give it to, opponent C if we want. They control their own commander, and they control this Darksteel Mutation that's enchanting that commander. It doesn't change the effect of Darksteel Mutation on the commander. And especially nice is the fact that that commander, or whatever creature we've put this on, is indestructible, meaning Darksteel Mutation is likely not going to leave the battlefield unless they have some other way, like I mentioned, to bounce it or exile it or flicker it or whatever it may be. So yeah, Darksteel Mutation is a great way for us to get value out of it and then lose no value by giving away this aura's control. Next, we have several of these in the deck. It's Golden Egg, or several of this kind of effect. So for 2 generic mana, we get an artifact Food that says when it enters, we draw a card. We can pay 1 and tap and sack it to add a mana of any color, so it filters 1 mana into any color of mana. Or we can do the food thing, pay 2, tap and sack it to gain 3 life. This is the classic food ability. So the idea with Golden Egg here is we're spending 2 mana to draw a card, and then have a food that we can give away, which is a permanent, which is easier for us to track than giving away tokens. A lot of the times people don't sleeve their tokens, but they do sleeve their deck, of course. So if you're giving away an unsleeved food token, sometimes you don't easily remember that it belongs to you. Giving away a permanent in this way, you do remember it. So a little bit nicer. It's also a good idea to consider, bringing some little items, little tokens of some sort, or tokens of a non-magical definition, to indicate how many permanents each of your opponents controls that actually belongs to us. I suggest getting those tiny little gift bows and getting just like a big sack of them or a box of them and just putting them on each card, that you give away, so that you can see like, okay, there's 3 bows on that player's playmat and 2 on this one and none on the other one. So yeah, 5 is the number I'm going for with Iroh. Just an idea. Next is Helm of Awakening. This is just very nice for the whole board. For 2 generic mana, we have an artifact that makes all spells cost 1 generic less to cast. It affects every player and every spell they cast. So again, this is a different take on, if we have this, everyone's spells cost 1 less. And then if we give this away to someone, everyone's spells still cost 1 less. If somebody wants to sacrifice this on their own, they're also shooting themselves in the foot. Maybe that's to their advantage, which means we need to be a little bit strategic in deciding which opponent gets control of the Helm of Awakening. But when we give it away, we're still getting the discount from it until that helm leaves the battlefield. So pretty nice. Hithlane Rope, from Lord of the Rings Commander is next. 2 generic mana for an artifact that cannot be sacrificed. It says pay 1 and tap to Rampant Growth. Search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle, and the player to your right gains control of this artifact. So this gives itself away. This will be in our donate section, we'll see that a little later. But essentially we put 2 on the battlefield, where we pay 2 to put it on the battlefield, and then we pay 1 and tap it, and we get to Rampant Growth. So 2 and then 1 and activate is the same thing as a Wayfarer's Bauble, which also lets us Rampant Growth. But this doesn't sacrifice the rope, it just hands it to someone else. Or we can pay 2, tap, and draw a card, and the player to the right gains control of this artifact. So either way, we're doing something that costs very little for what we're getting out of it, getting a land into play tapped or drawing a card, and it's going to the player to our right. So it's not unlikely that the Hithlane Rope ends up getting passed around the table, maybe even multiple times throughout the game. So we're probably going to be able to get some value out of this on our own, on our turn. We probably don't want to give this away with Iroh, although we sure can. We want to just be able to activate it so that it is able to give us some value, either by drawing us a card or by Rampant Growthing us. And then it goes to someone else's control, the player to our right, and it counts toward the number of permanents we control, or the number of permanents we own that our opponents control, which helps us put more counters on the allied tokens that Iroh makes, when we give something else away, of course. So Hithlane Rope is pretty sweet, and it goes with the sort of like group huggy feel that we're going for, but while still giving us some value from our commander and from it itself. Next is Humble Defector. This is 1 and a red for a 2/1 human rogue that says tap, draw 2 cards, target opponent gains control of this creature, activate only during your turn. So we can't do a little trick where we say tap the Humble Defector with its ability on the stack, do the Iroh thing, because its ability is all of this. So we wouldn't be able to go to combat, trigger Iroh, choose the Humble Defector, but before Iroh's trigger resolves, activate the Humble Defector, because then we're not ending up giving anything away. And Iroh has a reflexive trigger that makes the token for us. So we don't want to be able to do that I just mentioned. We're not going to be able to sort of double up giving this away, getting the 2 cards, and also the Iroh stuff. What we can do, however, is just give it away. We can just draw 2 cards off of this, send it to another opponent. Maybe it never comes back to us, and that's okay with us, because we still own this card, so it's still contributing to the number of cards we own that our opponents control. And when we do this, we're drawing 2 cards off of it. That's not bad. Next up, we have Instant Ramen from Final Fantasy. This is another one of our foods that we can use similarly to the Golden Egg. For 2 generic mana, we have an artifact food that when it enters, we draw a card, and it has the food ability. Pay 2, tap, and sack to gain 3 life. So if our opponents are sacrificing the food that we give them, great. They get to have a little life. We gave them a little present. It was on their battlefield for at least long enough for us to probably get some value out of it with Iroh, unless, of course, they sacrifice it in response to the Iroh trigger, in which case, that's okay. We still drew a card off of it. What's especially nice about Instant Ramen is it has flash, because it's instant. So what we can do with this is play it during our opponent to the right's turn, or during their end step. Just spend our last 2 mana, flash this in, draw ourselves a card, and we go to our turn, and we're able to use Instant Ramen as soon as we go to combat by giving it away with Iroh, without having to use any mana to play it during our turn. Nice. Next, we have one of our little pieces of coal. It's the Jinxed Idol. 2 generic mana for an artifact that says at the beginning of your upkeep, this artifact deals 2 damage to you. And if we sacrifice a creature, target opponent gains control of this artifact. So it is possible that our opponents will sacrifice their creatures to give this back to us. And if they do, well, that's too bad. They lost a creature. It's a free sack outlet, which is pretty nice. So if one of our opponents is playing a sacrifice deck, we probably don't want to give this to them, since they can respond to sacrificing a creature by sacrificing another one. So it gives them a lot of the ability to sacrifice creatures all at once. But any other opponent, like, they may have a token they're willing to throw away to give this back to us, or to give this to a different opponent. But it's nice to be able to see this getting passed around the table, and even if we end up taking 2 damage from it, since somebody has given it back to us, that means they sacrificed a creature, all we took was 2 damage, and we already have the Jinxed Idol back on our playmat to be able to send to someone else again with Iroh, so it just keeps going back. And it keeps doing damage to our opponents. Not that much, but just a little bit. We have another Jinxed item, which is the Jinxed Ring. For 2 generic mana, it's an artifact that says whenever a non-token permanent is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, this artifact deals 1 damage to you, and sacrifice a creature, target opponent gains control of this artifact. It's the same second ability as the prior card. So this is nice for someone who is playing a sacrifice deck, because if they're sacrificing a bunch of stuff, those things may not be tokens, which means they're going to take a bunch of damage from it in the process. So pretty nice either way. Lembas is, I think, our last food. This is from Lord of the Rings. For 2 generic mana, we get an artifact food, and when it enters, we don't just draw a card, we opt. We scry and then draw. And, of course, it does the food thing, 2 and tap and sack it to gain 3 life. But when it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, its owner shuffles it into their library. Meaning, it's not likely to happen, but if one of our opponents cracks Lembas, we don't lose it forever. It'll go to our graveyard, and then we shuffle it back into our library. So we get a shuffle, and we get maybe to see our Lembas again later. Nice. Plus, the opt here, rather than just a draw, is pretty good. Next, we have Oath of Lieges from Exodus. 1 and a white for an enchantment that says, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player chooses target player who controls more lands than they do, and is their opponent. The first player may search their library for a basic land, put that card into the battlefield, and then shuffle. So I want you to notice, this is not Rampant Growth, because it doesn't say, put that card onto the battlefield tapped. So this is just a catch-up mechanic. It only works if the first player has fewer lands than one of their opponents. But if they do, they get a land into play untapped during their upkeep, and that's pretty nice. And this works on everyone's turn. During each player's upkeep, they get to do this. So eventually, we're going to equalize the number of lands we have in play, assuming everyone has enough basics for that to happen. And again, this works no matter who controls it. So Oath of Lieges, we can get the benefit from it, and then give it away with Iroh, and keep getting the benefit from it as long as it remains in the battlefield. Next, from the Fallout decks, we have Overencumbered. This is another aura for 1 and a white. It enchants an opponent, and it says, when this aura enters, enchanted opponent creates a clue token, a food token, and a junk token. Pretty sweet. They get a bunch of stuff. A clue token, as you may know, is an artifact token that says pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card. A food token is pay 2, tap and sacrifice it to gain 3 life. And a junk token is just tap it and sacrifice it to exile the top card of your library, and you may play that card this turn. So we're giving them card advantage, and maybe even a little bit of life gain. So we're giving them a lot of good stuff. We're giving them way too much stuff, because at the beginning of combat on enchanted opponent's turn, that player may pay 1 mana for each artifact they control, and if they don't, creatures can't attack this combat. So this is sweet. We give it to someone who has a lot of artifacts already, or maybe even is playing an artifact-heavy deck, and we over-encumber them. We make it so they've got to either choose to spend their mana to attack, or spend their mana to cast spells, but maybe not both. And over-encumbered, of course, makes 3 artifacts for them from the start. So if they don't have the ability to crack those right away, or don't want to, then yeah, they're going to be behind on their ability to swing in for combat. Oh, and I guess I should mention, Overencumbered, we enchant an opponent, much like Curse of Hospitality. Is it Hospitality that we have? No, Curse of Opulence. Much like Curse of Opulence, Overencumbered, we enchant opponent A, and then we can give Overencumbered control to opponent B. Doesn't matter. Now it's controlled by someone else, and we still own it. So Iroh is going to be able to put more counters on our creatures, and the efficacy of it for hampering opponent A Doesn't change at all. Next we have Crown of Doom. 3 generic mana for an artifact that says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And this is a creature, so it affects every creature that attacks the controller of Crown of Doom. That controller can pay 2, and target player other than this artifact's owner gains control of it, activate only during your turn. So we cast this, and then we can either activate it and give it away to someone, or we can just give it away with Iroh, which is the reason it's in this section. And then that player is going to have it for as long as they haven't activated this second ability. And they can't give it back to us, as opposed to some of the other detrimental things in this deck. They're going to be getting a Trumpet Blast effect on all of the creatures that attack them, or a planeswalker they control, until they give it away. And they can give it away at instant speed, but only during their turn. And they can't give it back to us, since it's got to be someone other than the artifact's owner. Pretty neat. Next, I really love that this card's in this deck. This is just such a neat thing to do. Doomed Artisan is 2 and a white for a human artificer. That's a 1/1, and it says sculptures you control can't attack or block. At the beginning of your end step, create a colorless sculpture artifact creature token with this token's power and toughness are each equal to the number of sculptures you control. So what that means is, we cast the Artisan, we just let it sit there, and then we go to our end step and it makes a token, a sculpture. That sculpture is a 1/1. If we go to our next end step, we get another sculpture, and now they're both 2/2s. The next end step, we get to make a third token. They're all 3/3s. You understand. But none of them can attack or block, because that's what the Artisan says. Until we sacrifice the Artisan, lose the Artisan, it dies, gets exiled, or Iroh gives him away. And when that happens, all of our tokens can now attack and block. They all retain their same power and toughness as they had before, until some of them die. And just pretty nice. We give the Artisan away, and now the Artisan is making sculptures on an opponent's board. That seems fun. Or what we can do is play the Artisan, go to our end step, make a sculpture. On our next turn, we give the sculpture away, and we'll make another one. Now, those sculptures can attack and block when someone else controls them, but then maybe we give the Artisan away after we've given an opponent a few sculptures, and now their sculptures can't attack or block. And they're just going to keep making more and more sculptures that the Artisan is going to produce. It's just a fun card. Is it good? I don't think it is, but I really like it. So yeah, Doomed Artisan produces more gifts that we can give, makes it so we have creatures that can do things for us eventually. Once we give away the Artisan, yeah, it just seems fun. And who plays this? Come on. Next up is a classic for a donate deck. 9 Lives is an enchantment for 1 and double white. 9 Lives itself has hexproof, so our opponents can't target at this. And it says, if a source would deal damage to you, prevent that damage and put an incarnation counter on this enchantment. When there are 9 or more incarnation counters on this enchantment, exile it, and when this enchantment leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. So the idea behind this is a little risky. We can either, A, play this and immediately use Iroh's trigger to give it to someone else. And then we want to try and help our opponents do as much damage to that player as possible, because once they've taken damage from 9 different sources, they'll have 9 incarnation counters, 9 lives will leave the battlefield, and when it does, that player will lose. We can also have 9 lives in play and leave it in play for a turn cycle, or maybe even 2. Let our opponents hit us, because when they do, we don't take any damage from it, we just get incarnation counters on 9 lives. And then the next turn, or the turn after that, if we're willing to push it, we give 9 lives away when it already has a few incarnation counters on it. Maybe if it has 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 on it, our opponent that we give this to is very close to just losing the game the next time they would take damage. So it's a little risky for us to hang on to it for any amount of time, but giving it away early does feel fun too, because it then sits on an opponent's battlefield or an opponent's playmat for at least a few turns, probably at least 2 turns, before it gets popped. And during that time, it's helping them out, and it's helping us out too, because it's a permanent in someone else's control that we own. So yeah. Next up is very mean. This is Steel Golem. 3 generic mana for a 3/4 artifact creature golem that just says you can't cast creature spells. So we're not running as many creature spells in this deck as often we do. We've only got 18 creatures, including our commander. But there's going to be someone at our table who's playing dinosaurs, or who's playing vampires, or soldiers. Whatever they may be doing, there's going to be someone who's playing some sort of creature-typal deck, or just a creature-heavy deck. We give them Steel Golem with Iroh, and they can't cast creature spells. And they're just going to have to wait there and hope that they can either block with the Steel Golem so that it dies, or find a way to sacrifice it, or bounce it, or something. They're just going to be stymied in a big way, which is nice for us because we can get them to appreciate, rather than playing with their own toys, let everyone at the table have fun. What's nice about this is we can say as well, and this is not wrong, hey, I'm actually saving you because no one wants you to be able to cast creature spells, so now no one's going to attack you in a way that would kill your Steel Golem. So you're being protected from attacks. You're welcome. Next, we have Tempt with Bunnies from Bloomborough Commander. 2 and a white for a sorcery with a tempting offer to make. First, we draw a card and we make a 1/1 white rabbit creature token, 1/1 bun. And then each opponent may draw a card and make their own bun. And for each opponent who did, we draw a card and make a bun of our own. So it's possible that every opponent gets a card and a 1/1 rabbit, and we end up with 4 cards and 4 1/1 rabbits. So those rabbits are great for us to be able to give things away. And I normally don't put cards that just make tokens in this section, in this gifts section. This card is really more about giving because it's about helping everyone else get value from what we're doing, get people into the spirit of giving. But this makes several different bunnies, and these 1/1s are not helping us the way that our allies are, so we don't mind giving them out. Gives us a lot of good card draw as well. Next is Touch the Spirit Realm. Touch the Spirit Realm is 2 and a white for an enchantment that is sort of like Banishing Light or Oblivion Ring. When it enters, we exile an artifact or creature until Touch the Spirit Realm leaves the battlefield. That's pretty good as a good removal spell, but we also have a channel ability, meaning while it's in our hand, we can pay 1 and a white and discard it to exile an artifact or creature and return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. This is one of the several blink effects that we have. Blink being exile something and then return it to the battlefield, even though this is what's called a slow blink or a slow flicker, I usually refer to it as, because it waits until the next end step to function. This is a nice way that we can protect something of ours. Maybe we flicker it or slow flicker it when it's being targeted with a removal spell. We can use this to protect ourselves without losing a creature. Maybe an opponent's attacking with something pretty big and we block with one of our creatures and then channel will Touch the Spirit Realm to flicker our creature, and if the attacker didn't have trample, then we're not taking any damage and our creature will come back. But the other kind of tricky thing we can do with this is we can channel something cool that we've given to our opponent, or channel this on something cool. So let's say we give away even just Iroh himself, because it doesn't say another permanent. I'm going to make sure I'm not lying to you about that. Iroh says you may have target creature gain control of target permanent you control. So we can do lands if we want to, but we can also give them Iroh if we really feel like it. And when we do, we'll make our ally and put counters on the ally based on the number of permanents that we own that our opponents control. Pretty sweet. But Touch the Spirit Realm says return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So we can give something away with Iroh, get the benefit from Iroh's trigger, and then anytime we want, we can take it back by flickering it, and it will return to the battlefield under our control. The only thing that wouldn't come back is a token, so we just don't channel this on tokens. So Touch the Spirit Realm has a lot of effects for us that we can use in different cool ways. Next is Yes Man, Personal Securitron from the Fallout Commander decks. This is a 2/2 legendary artifact creature robot for 2 and a white that says tap, target opponent gains control of Yes Man. When they do, we draw 2 cards and put a quest counter on Yes Man, and we only can do this during our turn, but we can do it at instant speed. And then wild card. When Yes Man leaves the battlefield, its owner creates a tapped 1/1 white soldier creature token for each quest counter on it. Remember, it gets a quest counter every time someone activates Yes Man. So we don't probably want to give Yes Man away with Iroh, although we sure can. But what we can do is we can tap Yes Man to just draw 2 cards during our turn. He goes to someone else's board, he gets a quest counter, and probably that's going to keep happening until someone decides to block with him, sacrifice him, something along those lines. Even if they flicker him or bounce him, then of course he'll go back to us because it's when he leaves the battlefield, not just when he dies. Then we'll make a bunch of soldier tokens. And if he did go back to us, then we'll get to do him again. If he didn't, that's okay. We get our soldier tokens, and we got at least 2 cards off of him, and we were able to give those cards to our opponents as well, as they also activated him. So pretty nice. Next up is Alexios, Deimos of Cosmos. I don't know who this is, but it's from the Assassin's Creed product. If you know who Alexios is, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm kind of interested. I have this card in paper. I've only ever opened 1 pack of Assassin's Creed, and I got a Sword of X and Y in it. I was pretty excited about that, but Alexios seems cool too. For 3 and a red, we have a 4/4 legendary human berserker with trample, and Alexios attacks each combat if able, can't be sacrificed, and can't attack its owner. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player gains control of Alexios, untaps it, and puts a counter on it, and it gains haste until end of turn. So Alexios, once we cast him, he's leaving our playmat anyway, at the beginning of the next player's upkeep. So we might as well send him to someone. It doesn't matter who. I guess it matters if we don't want him to block. But yeah, we send him to someone else with Iroh at the start of our combat, and we get the benefit from him being there. And then, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they're going to get control of Alexios. He's going to get bigger, and no one can sacrifice him, and no one can attack us with him, because it can't attack his owner. So Alexios is just going to be passed around the table, and during every turn that isn't ours, we're going to be able to enjoy knowing that he's on someone else's battlefield, or on their playmat, because we only care about how many permanents we own that opponents control during our turn, during the start of combat when Iroh is triggering, and during that time, Alexios is going to be on our playmat. Except that we can use Iroh to give him away before Iroh counts the number of permanents. So we can give Alexios away every time. And if we don't want to, we can give something else away with Iroh, and then attack with Alexios, and Alexios is going to be pretty big for us at that point, and it's a big trampler. So either way, this is pretty sweet with us. Next up is Cinder Giant from Weatherlight. I was playing during Weatherlight. I may have even owned this. 3 and a red for a 5/3 giant that says at the beginning of your upkeep, this creature deals 2 damage to each other creature you control. So in all likelihood, we want to give away Cinder Giant as quickly as we can. We don't want this to stick around. Our opponents are probably going to sacrifice this or block with it so it dies, but it's going to give us a little bit of value at some point, and it might, if we choose properly for the first time we give this away with Iroh, it might be the case that we're able to wipe someone's board, or mostly wipe their board. Get rid of a lot of their little 1/1 tokens if they've got those flying around. Cinder Giant is too narrow for me to qualify it as a board wipe, but it technically is that a little bit. So yeah. Next up is Girapur Orrery. Was this originally printed in Kaladesh? Yeah. So 4 generic mana for an artifact that says each player may play an additional land on each of their turns, and at the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. So pretty sweet for us. It gives us the ability to ramp, because we can always put more lands into play during our turns, and we have a lot of card draw in this deck. And if we end up with no cards in hand, at the start of our upkeep, we suddenly have 3 cards in hand, and then we'll draw for our turn. So this is all affecting everyone. And it affects everyone no matter who controls it, so it's great for us to play and then give away. Hopefully having also played an extra land during that turn. Karn the Betrayer, not the Karn we're used to in Magic. This guy is a 5/1 legendary Astartes Berserker from the Warhammer decks for 3 and a red. He has a Berserker ability. He will attack or block each combat if able. He has a Sigil of Corruption, which is whenever we lose control of Karn, we draw 2 cards. And if damage would be dealt to Karn, prevent that damage and an opponent of our choice gains control of it. So pretty sweet here. We have Karn, we give him away with Iroh, getting the Iroh trigger, but also getting this when you lose control of Karn trigger and drawing 2 cards off of him. We could, if we chose to not activate him or not to choose him with Iroh's start of combat trigger, we could just hang on to him and then block with him. And when we block with him, we'll lose control thanks to this. We'll draw 2 cards, he'll go to someone else's board, etc. So pretty nice for us either way. And being able to do another sort of Alexios type card that just gets passed around and maybe survives and eventually draws people cards, that seems pretty good. Next is Rust Elemental. This one's great. 4 generic mana for a 4/4 flying artifact creature elemental that says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice another artifact. If you can't, tap this creature and you lose 4 life. So this is just a really mean thing to give to our opponents. We play this, we give it away. They now have a 4/4 that during their upkeep, if they don't sacrifice another artifact, they don't have a 4/4 flyer. Instead, they have a tapped 4/4 flyer and they lose 4 life. Now they could sacrifice this themselves, they could burn it or do something else they want to do to get rid of it, but it's pretty likely that this is going to either cost them an artifact or 4 life at least once. And if we are clever about this, we could probably put it on someone's board where they have to either lose 4 life or lose their Soul Ring or their Arcane Signet, something along those lines. Or if we want to be nice, we could put this on someone's board when all they have in terms of artifacts other than the Elemental is like a Solemn Simulacrum, which means they lose that and they draw a card off of it. No big deal. Finally, we have Coveted Jewel. 6 generic mana for an artifact that when it enters, we draw 3 cards. And it adds 3 mana of any one color. Pretty sweet for 6 mana. And whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls attack us, and they aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of the artifact, and then they untap it. So the way this works is this last trigger does not trigger until after declaration of blockers. During the declare blockers step, that's the only time we know that creatures aren't blocked. They aren't blocked only after they've had a chance to be blocked. It's not the case that when you're attacking with them, oh, they're not blocked because they haven't been blocked yet. That's not how that works. Before declaration of blockers, attacking creatures are neither blocked nor unblocked. They don't have that status yet. So this happens during the declare blocker step, worth remembering. However, what's nice about this is we get the Coveted Jewel, we draw 3 cards, we tap it for 3 mana, we use that mana, then we give it away with Iroh, and then we attack the player who we gave it to. They did just draw 3 cards, but if we have any creatures that they can't block, we will get it back immediately, draw 3 cards, and untap it, and we can tap it for mana again. Which means one of our opponents has drawn 3 cards, and we've drawn 6 cards, and we've gotten 6 mana from it over the course of that turn. We may not be able to use all of that, but we've just drawn 6 cards, so maybe it seems pretty likely we can. Anyway, Coveted Jewel can get passed around the table pretty easily, and when it is, that helps our opponents, and it helps us because they control something that we own. So that covers our gifts section. We also have this giving section. The giving section is about cards that give everyone a chance to be in the spirit of giving. For example, Custody Battle doesn't have to be something we control, but it does give the ability for other players to pass this enchanted creature around. It helps them do some giving. Helm of Awakening puts everyone in the spirit of giving because, well, everyone's happier to enjoy a discount on their spells. Hithalian Rope, we want to activate this and give it to other people because it gives us either a rampant growth or a card draw. Howling Mine, and I always use the Mark Poole art because this is the art from when I was playing back in the 95. 2 generic mana for an artifact that says at the beginning of each player's draw step, if this artifact is untapped, that player draws an additional card. So this helps everyone draw extra cards every turn. As long as someone doesn't contrive a way to tap the Howling Mine, everyone's going to get 2 cards rather than just the 1 during their draw step, and that's pretty great. So giving this away to someone also helps. We don't mind giving it to someone else generally. We don't want them to be able to sacrifice it after they get their card draw, so I didn't put this in the gift section, but yeah, it could fit there as well. Humble Defector, we've already seen. It gives us the ability to draw cards, but also give it away to someone else. So all of the cards that can sort of donate themselves to other people repeatedly fit as a giving card. Noble Heritage is next. 1 and a white for a legendary enchantment background, which gives our commander an ability. It gives them this ability, which is when our commander enters and at the beginning of our upkeep, each player, including us, may put 2 1/1 counters on a creature they control, and for each opponent who does, we gain protection from that player until our next turn. Meaning they can't target us with anything, nothing they control can deal damage to us, and nothing that they have that could enchant us can enchant us. They can still target, damage, or enchant our permanents, but they can't go after us. So pretty good as a way to protect us, but also to pass around +1/+1 counters. How nice is that of us? And we also put them on one of our creatures, which does not have to be Iroh, but it sure could be. Next, we've seen Oath of Lieges. Oath of Lieges lets everyone catch up for their land play. That seems pretty good. Over Encumbered, it's giving someone a clue, a food, and a junk. That's life gain and 2 kinds of card advantage. Who would say that that's bad? Parting Gust is next. Parting Gust is double white for an instant that has gift a tapped fish, meaning when we cast this, we can promise an opponent a gift. And if we do, they will make a 1/1 blue fish creature token that is tapped before the rest of this happens. So that is why this is in the giving section. We're able to give them a fish. Maybe they want a nice fish. Parting Gust exiles a non-token creature. It's a removal spell. However, if we gave the gift, that card will come back to the battlefield under its owner's control with a 1/1 counter at the beginning of the next end step. So this is either a removal spell or it's a slow flicker, depending on whether we gave this fish. So we can steal something back from an opponent if we want to. We can help protect an opponent's creature, because it doesn't have to be something that we control, so we can play this politically. You know, maybe an opponent's commander is forced to block a different opponent's attack, and we can say, hey, I can save your commander if you'll leave me alone for a couple turns. And if they say yes, we just Parting Gust, gift the tapped fish. That fish can go to the person we're helping, or the person we're stymieing, or the other opponent entirely. And then the opponent we helped gets their commander back at their next end step, or the next end step. So yeah, Parting Gust is very flexible for the ways that we can use it in our deck, or for our game plan, and for other people's. Share the Spoils is so much fun. This card is even, there are some people who play with this as an emblem, and it's just in play from the start in Commander. It's really fun. Anyway, it's 1 and a red for an enchantment that says, when this enchantment enters, and whenever an opponent loses the game, exile the top card of each player's library. And during each player's turn, that player may play a land or cast a spell from among cards exiled with this enchantment, and they may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell, and when they do, exile the top card of their library. So the idea here is, this enters, everyone takes a card off the top of their library and exiles it face up, essentially in the middle of the table. These cards are a pool of cards that are essentially in everyone's hand. So you can, if someone else has exiled a land in that little pool, you can play that as your land drop during your turn. It's not actually in your hand, so they can't be discarded, or things like that. But you're able to have access to those cards, and it almost perfectly fixes your mana, because it says they may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. So if there's a card in there, in that pool, that requires colorless mana, and you don't have any sources of colorless mana, it doesn't make your mana colorless. Colorless mana, obviously, is not a color, so you can't spend your mana as though it were colorless. Just worth noting. However, giving you access to essentially 4 other cards every turn, and they just stick around until they're cast or played, and whenever any card is played out of this pool, whoever contributed that card exiles the top card of their library again, and so there's always a number of cards in this pool equal to the number of players, or more, because if opponent A loses, then there's still a card in that pool for opponents B and C and for us, but we add an extra one, so now there's 2 for everyone. And when opponent B loses, now it's us and opponent C, and there's three cards from each library in that pool. So there's always going to be a few cards that are accessible to us. It's pretty sweet. Share the spoils is a lot of fun, and we should be sharing in the holidays. And all the time, truly. Crown of Doom lets other players gain control of it, so it helps our players get in the spirit of giving, so they can give the crown away to each other. Duelist's Heritage is 2 and a white for an enchantment that says whenever one or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. This does not say whenever one or more creatures you control attack. So this happens anytime any player attacks. We get to choose to give one of the attacking creatures double strike. Obviously, we're not likely to do that if they're attacking us. But we can say, hey, remember I have Duelist's Heritage, so you could attack me, but you could also attack one of our mutual opponents, and if you do, I will give your creature double strike. It does work on our creatures as well, of course, so we can give one of our creatures double strike when we're attacking. So Duelist's Heritage is a way for us to be political, but also to spread out the double strike and say, hey, as long as you're not coming at me, I'm happy to give one of your things double strike. And I will do that equally for every other player. Everyone's going to get to have double strike. I get to choose what gets double strike, but I'll try and keep it as fair as possible. You could make that argument, and people will probably go with it. Double strike is pretty fun, especially if it's free. Emergency Eject is next. This is one of my favorite removal spells lately. I know in a White Elephant deck, you would expect to see Generous Gift, but I don't really like Generous Gift. I don't want to have spells that can hit lands most of the time. So if you're looking for something that doesn't hit lands, Stroke of Midnight is a pretty good option, but Emergency Eject I think is better because instead of giving a creature, which could block, it gives a Wayfarer's Bauble in the form of a lander token. So this is 2 and a white for an instant that says destroy target non-land permanent, and its controller creates a lander token, which, like I said, is a Wayfarer's Bauble. It's an artifact with pay 2, tap and sack it, 2 rampant growth. Search for basic, put it on the battlefield, tapped and shuffle. I think this is better than giving them a creature, whether it's the 1/1 human from Stroke of Midnight or the 3/3 green elephant from Generous Gift, because they can't block or attack with that token, with a lander token, of course, and if they want to get the value out of it, they've got to pay mana into it, and then the value they get is a basic that is tapped, so they've got to wait still. So yeah, they may be able to do that all at once, as soon as we emergency eject, but if they did, that's mana they weren't putting towards something else. So yeah, I like this card, and I know you're thinking, well, how is this giving? Well, we're giving them a lander token. The fact that we had to blow something up is just part of Magic, but we're giving them something in the process, and it's a cool new thing from Edge of Eternities. Yeah. Similar principle here with Lauren of the Third Path. 2 and a white for a 2/1 legendary human artificer with vigilance that says when Lauren enters, we destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So she comes with a free disenchant. Pretty nice. Reasonable when you're looking at the Golgothian Silex. But we can also tap Lauren and one of our opponents, and we draw a card. And we can do that repeatedly over and over, even if we're attacking with Lauren, because she has vigilance. So the ability to keep giving our opponents cards, while also, of course, getting one ourselves, is pretty nice, and I feel like it puts people in the spirit of giving. Temple Bell, similarly, is 3 generic mana for an artifact that lets us tap it, and each player draws a card. Pretty good. This is not likely to be the kind of thing we want to give away, but we sure could, because sometimes having a player tap down the Temple Bell so that they can draw, we're still going to get to draw when that happens. It's just more nice that we can do it ourselves and spread out the giving from our playmat. But if we want to give it away, it's not a terrible option to do. We've seen Tempt with Bunnies and how it gives everyone rabbits and everyone tokens, or rather rabbits and cards if they want them. Next we have a Crow and a Horse. I love this card. For 4 generic mana, we have a 0/4 artifact creature horse with Defender. So it's a 0/4 Defender for 4. But when it enters, an opponent gains control of it. That happens as soon as it enters the battlefield, so there's no way for us to give this away with Iroh. But it says at the beginning of your upkeep, your being the controller's upkeep, each opponent creates a 1/1 white soldier creature token. So whichever opponent we give the horse to now controls a permanent that we own, so it's empowering the tokens that Iroh makes, and they're giving us a soldier, as well as our other mutual opponents during each of their upkeeps while they control the horse. That's pretty nice of them. Thanks, opponent. We've seen the Orrery, lets everyone make extra land drops, and lets everyone draw 3 cards during their upkeep if they don't have any cards in hand. Karn, passes around the table every time he would take damage, and anyone who loses control of him draws 2 cards. Next up is Wedding Ring, and I'm using the Doctor Who printing because it is the cheapest so far. 2 and double white for an artifact that says when it enters, if it was cast, target opponent creates a token that's a copy of it. So we get a Wedding Ring and we give it to one of our opponents. Isn't that nice of us? And then whenever an opponent who controls an artifact named Wedding Ring draws a card during their turn, we draw a card as well. That means whenever we draw a card during our turn, the other player with a copy of Wedding Ring also draws a card, since they have an opponent who controls an artifact named Wedding Ring, which is the original. And whenever an opponent who controls an artifact named Wedding Ring gains life during their turn, we gain that much. So essentially, on each player who controls a Wedding Ring, on each of their turns, whenever they would draw a card or gain life, everyone else with a Wedding Ring also gains that much life and draws that many cards. So pretty sweet. Great way for us to spin it around, especially since we draw a lot of cards in our deck. So we want to give this to someone who we're likely to get the most advantage out of. Maybe a blue player? Finally, we have the Legend of Yangchen. This is the avatar who was an airbender before Aang. So before Aang, there was Avatar Roku, and before Roku, there was Avatar Kyoshi, and then before Kyoshi, there was Kuruk, and before that, it was Yangchen. Yangchen, as I understand it, was sort of a spy master and like a blackmailer, and used that blackmail to keep the nations of the world in check against each other. Like a very cool character. So Legend of Yangchen is a saga. If you haven't seen sagas before, the way this works is it comes in and it gets a lore counter on it immediately, and it triggers the first chapter ability because it has 1 lore counter on it, so chapter 1. At the start of your first main phase, you get another lore counter on it, which will trigger chapter 2, and then the following turn's first main phase, it'll get its next lore counter, trigger chapter 3, and normally it would be sacrificed after this ability resolves, but this is a flip saga, and as part of its third chapter's resolution, it will flip over and become a creature. So the way this works is when it first comes in and it gets its first lore counter, we get the first ability, which is starting with us. Each player chooses up to 1 permanent with mana value 3 or greater from among permanents your opponents control. Exile those permanents. That means everyone at the table gets to choose 0 or 1 things among all the mana value 3 or greater permanents on the battlefield. Everyone gets to choose them. The only restriction, besides them having to be mana value 3 or greater, is that they can't be something that we control, because they have to be permanents that our opponents control. So this can backfire on us if everyone chooses the same thing and it's one of the permanents that we gave away. But a lot of the permanents we're giving away are either pretty good for whoever we've given it to, in addition to being good for us, and that may be able to be passed around the table, like Coveted Jewel or Humble Defector, or it's something that's detrimental to a player, in which case, if the player who currently controls it wants to get rid of it, I bet the other 2 opponents at the table won't want them to get rid of it, so they're going to choose something else, so we're exiling more than 1 thing, which is still pretty good value. Then, Legend of Yangchen's second chapter is, we may have an opponent draw 3 cards, and if we do, we draw 3 cards. That's pretty giving. And then finally, chapter 3 is we exile the Legend of Yangchen, and we return it transformed to the battlefield under our control, and we get Avatar Yangchen, which is a 4/5 flying legendary avatar creature that says whenever we cast our second spell each turn, airbend up to 1 other target non-land permanent. Airbending means we exile those things, and while it's exiled, its owner can cast it at the normal timing rules for 2 generic mana rather than its cost. So that's pretty nice for us to be able to do with our own things if we want to get more enters triggers. It's pretty nice if we airbend something that we have sent away to another player's control, because we can cast it again. So if someone maybe gains control of Coveted Jewel, we can airbend it, and we'll be able to cast it ourselves for 2 and get all of its card draw and the mana that it produces right away. So Yangchen lets us do it's like the slowest possible flicker in the way of, if you want to think of it as removal, because we can, airbend someone's commander, airbend someone's blockers. We can only do it once on each of our turns when we cast our second spell, but that's pretty nice. So that covers our giving section. Finally, in our game plan, we have this donate section, which has a lot of cards we've already seen, but a few we haven't, like Bloodthirsty Blade. For 2 generic mana, we have an artifact, it's an equipment, that does not have an equip ability. It just says equipped creature gets +2/+0 and is goaded, which means if it is able to attack, it has to. And if there's any options for players that it can attack other than us, its controller can't choose to attack us with it. So if there's more than 3 players, or there's more than 2 players in the game, then whoever controls this has to attack with it if they can, and can't choose to attack us. Pretty good. And as a sorcery, we can pay a generic mana to attach it to a target creature an opponent controls. Pretty good. So it's like we get to equip it, but only at sorcery speed to an opponent's creature. But it makes that opponent's creature goaded and makes them a little bit stronger, which means we're protected from that creature. So whatever big, scary, horrible creature is in play, we just give it a little bit of a power boost and goad it, so now it can't attack us. And we do that for 1 mana. And now, it's worth noting that Bloodthirsty Blade is then equipped to a creature we don't control, but we still control the blade. We still have the ability at sorcery speed on our turn to move the blade to a different creature. Just because it's attached to a creature we don't control doesn't mean we don't control the blade still. Now we can give away the Bloodthirsty Blade ourselves with one of our other donate effects, or of course with Iroh. If we do that, an opponent is likely to attach it to one of our creatures, forcing us to attack with that creature, not able to attack the creature that attack the opponent that controls it, etc. It's not a great idea to give away Bloodthirsty Blade in that way, but by sort of protecting ourselves from whatever creature we attach this to, that's pretty nice, and it goes with the theme of our deck, even if it doesn't actually give us a benefit when it comes to Iroh's triggered ability. We've seen the Hithlane Rope. It donates itself by us activating one of its abilities, and it gives itself to someone else. Same thing with Humble Defector. We tap it, draw 2 cards, and it gives itself away. Jinxed Idol and Jinxed Ring both have the ability, if the controller sacrifices a creature, then an opponent will gain control of the idol or ring. But again, if an opponent sacrifices a creature to give us this idol or ring, we can just use Iroh to give it back, or give it to someone else. Crown of Doom can be activated by its controller to change control of it to someone other than us. It can't go back to its owner. Next is Pendant of Prosperity. 3 generic mana for an artifact that enters under the control of an opponent of our choice. It doesn't even, like a Crow and Horse, come in and then change controllers. It just comes in under that player's control. It's an artifact with pay 2, tap to draw a card, and then put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. It's like Growth Spiral, basically. And then the artifact's owner does the same thing. So this is sweet. We get to play this. We're not able to give it away with Iroh because it's not going to come in under our control, but whatever opponent we give this to, maybe someone who's behind on their lands, maybe someone who's desperate for card advantage, maybe just any Magic player who's willing to spend 2 mana to Growth Spiral multiple times. It's pretty sweet. Pendant of Prosperity gives us possibly a card draw and maybe an extra land play, even though it's not actually the special action of playing a land, whenever the opponent who we've given this to activates it. For 2 mana, being able to draw an extra card every turn plus make an extra land play, essentially, is pretty tempting. So we give it to someone who looks like they're going to use it, and we're off to the races. Yes Man, of course. As part of his activated ability, we draw 2 cards, put a quest counter on him, and someone else gains control of him. The Crow and Horse comes in and automatically donates itself to someone else. And Alexios changes control at the start of each player's upkeep to become under the control of the player whose turn it is. So a lot of donate cards there. And that covers most of our game plan. I want to talk about the categories that we have that I call supplemental, that are meant to help out our game plan in ways that are already part of it. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at these categories of support for that game plan, starting with card advantage. We have, I usually tag this, as I have this time, with the word draw. It doesn't necessarily mean that all these cards are drawing us cards. This is just sort of that category. So we've seen a lot of these, actually. Golden Egg enters, draws us a card. Hithlane Rope, we can pay 2 and tap it to draw a card, and then the player to the right gains control of it. Howling Mine it lets everyone draw another card during their draw step if it's untapped during that draw step. Humble Defector, we can activate it, draw 2 cards, and it goes away. Idol of Oblivion is 2 generic mana for an artifact that if we tap it, we just draw a card. We can only do this if we created a token this turn, but we're creating a token every turn we give something away with Iroh, we're making an ally token. So after we make that ally token, maybe during our second main phase, maybe during combat, doesn't matter, we can activate the idol and just draw an extra card every turn. Pretty sweet. We also have the ability, if we want, to pay 8, tap and sacrifice the idol to make a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. If we need something really big that we're probably not going to give away, we can sacrifice the idol. But in all honesty, this is here as a card advantage engine. We're probably going to be able to get to use it as one. Instant Ramen and Limbus both enter and draw us a card. Limbus lets us scry first. Share the Spoils gives us access to 4 other cards at least during each of our turns, thanks to the little pool of cards in exile that we can play. Staff of the Storyteller is another sort of Idol of Oblivion type card. 1 and a white for an artifact that when it enters, we make a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. We get a little flyer, which maybe we're willing to give away with Iroh. And whenever we create 1 or more tokens, including when this enters, we put a story counter on Staff of the Storyteller. Story counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by this card. Because we can pay a white, tap, and remove a story counter from the staff to draw a card. So every time we make a token, when we give something away with Iroh, we're going to get a story counter on the staff, then we can pay a white and tap it and remove that counter, or one of the other counters on it, to draw a card. So costs us a little bit more every turn than Idol of Oblivion for a similar effect, because it costs us 1 to activate rather than just being able to tap. But it does come with a token that is even a flyer when it first comes in. Pretty nice. We've seen Lauren. Lauren we can tap in order to have us and an opponent draw a card. Pendant of Prosperity lets an opponent activate it and get a free growth spiral effect, and then we do too. Temple Bell, anyone can tap it, the controller can tap it, and each player draws a card. Pretty good. Tempt with Bunnies, we're going to draw at least 1 card and make at least 1 rabbit out of this, and for each opponent who also does the same, we're going to get to do it again. Yes Man, like we already said, we can tap him and give him away to draw 2 cards, put a quest counter on him. Garapor Orrery does let us draw if we have no cards in hand during our upkeep. It's not likely, but it could happen. Karn, when we lose control of Karn, we draw 2 cards. Wedding Ring lets us draw cards whenever our opponent that also controls a Wedding Ring draws cards on their turn. Legend of Yangchen lets us do a draw 3 and an opponent draws 3. This is a secret rendezvous, I think we'd call it. And Coveted Jewel lets us draw 3 whenever it enters the battlefield or whenever we gain control of it, again, which we will. So that is a lot of card advantage in this deck. Let's take a look at our acceleration, which again I've just tagged as ramp. So we've seen Curse of Opulence. Curse of Opulence is a good way for us to make gold tokens whenever anyone attacks the enchanted player. We are, of course, running Soul Ring, 1 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless mana. That's all we need to say about it. It's incredibly powerful. Put it in your deck. Wayfarer's Bauble, we've already seen something like it, which is those lander tokens. For 1 mana, we get an artifact that if we pay 2, tap and sack it, we get to Rampant Growth. So we get to find ourselves a basic plains or a mountain rather, put it on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Pretty okay. Also, something that's not embarrassing to give away if we were to need to do something like that with Iroh. Arcane Signet, something we definitely don't want to give away. 2 generic mana for an artifact that we can tap for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So this is an untapped mana rock that taps for white or red for us. We don't want to give it away to someone else because then it taps for any color in their commander's color identity. So let them play their own Arcane Signets. Hithlane Rope can let us ramp because it lets us Rampant Growth for 1 and tap, and then it goes to someone else. Oath of Lieges lets everyone get a little bit of catch up when it comes to their lands. Talisman of Conviction is another 2 mana rock. It's 2 generic for an artifact that taps for colorless, but it can also tap for red or white if we're willing to let it do a damage to us each time it does, which is fine. Because if we have this in play, this is a little bit of really fast acceleration. It's 2 mana for something that just taps for colorless. And if we're desperate for colored mana, it lets us cast our spells that we wouldn't otherwise be able to cast. So it's worth paying a point of life or having it do a damage to us every time we need to make red or white with it. Usually we're not going to need to, but when we do, we're going to be glad that we can. Pendant of Prosperity, of course, it's growth spiral every time it gets activated, even though we don't get to choose when that happens. Still pretty nice. Girapur Orrery gives us an extra land drop each turn, which is totally good acceleration. We've seen Coveted Jewel, it adds 3 mana when we tap it. But we also have Zidane, Tantalus Thief from Final Fantasy. This is a 3/3 legendary human mutant scout. I don't know what their deal is because I am not a Final Fantasy person, but they seem cool in this deck. And they cost 3 and a red and a white. And it says, when Zidane enters, we gain control of target creature and opponent controls until end of turn. We untap it, and it gains lifelink and haste until end of turn. And then, whenever an opponent gains control of a permanent from us, we make a treasure. So this is going to be happening every turn. We're going to be getting a treasure every turn when we give something away with Iroh. That's pretty good. Maybe we're giving away those treasures even. We make a treasure, next turn we give that treasure away, we make a replacement treasure. That's totally fine to do. But we also have this effect from here. Zidane comes in, and we get to threaten something. We get to steal control of it. It gets untapped, it gets haste, and it also gains lifelink. So what this is really cool, what we can do with this is steal an opponent's creature. It gets untapped, lifelink, and haste. Then we go to combat, and we give that creature away with Iroh. So that does not let us get a benefit from it, because that creature is not a creature that we own. So that's not us increasing the count of creatures that, or of permanents rather, that we own that our opponents control. But it is fun, and sometimes we just need to be able to do that. Sometimes we can make a deal with someone and say, look, opponent A is getting a lot of benefit from their big creature. Opponent B, if I give you that creature, will you just not attack me with it? Just make me immune to it for the rest of the game? And they'll say, sure, because they're also suffering from that big creature with opponent A. Maybe that's optimistic for me to think that that kind of play would happen, but if I were opponent B, I would definitely agree to that. Anyway, there's fun stuff you can do with this if you have a theft effect like Zidane gives us. And in any case, being able to make treasures every time we give things away, including at the end of turn, if we stole this and then we only get control of it until end of turn, at the end of turn this goes away and we get a treasure. That's still pretty good value. All right, that covers our acceleration section. Let's talk about interaction, which again I've just sort of shorthanded as removal. We are a red deck, so we are running Lightning Bolt. It's just so powerful. For a single red, it's an instant, it does 3 damage to any target. It's from Alpha, it's worth playing. And you don't have to run the Strixhaven Mystical Archive printing, but the Mystical Archive is gorgeous, and it's one of my favorite Lightning Bolts. We're running Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares. These cards are almost exactly the same. They're both instants, they both cost 1 mana, and they both exile target creature, and they both give that creature's controller a little kickback. Swords to Plowshares gives that creature's controller life equal to the creature's power, and Path to Exile lets that creature's controller rampant growth. They search for basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Obviously, Swords to Plowshares is more powerful, but both are very good premium removal in white, so we're running them. Darksteel Mutation, we've already seen. It doesn't remove a creature, but it removes it from being a problem, basically. And that's pretty good. Plus it adds to our... it can add to our number of permanents that we own that our opponents control, because we can then give away control of Darksteel Mutation, and it doesn't change the situation on the board. Parting Gust, if we don't promise the gift, is 2 white to exile a non-token creature. Pretty good. Emergency Eject lets us destroy an on-land permanent. Lauren comes in and lets us disenchant something, destroy an artifact or enchantment. Next we have Momo's Heist. This is 2 and a red. It's from the Tea Time of the Jasmine Dragon scene box. It's a sorcery, and it says gain control of target artifact. Untap it, it gains haste, and at the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice it. So this lets us steal something of an opponent's, and if we can use it this turn, great. And if not, doesn't matter because we're going to sacrifice it at the end step. So it lets us destroy an artifact. We can, however, steal back one of our own things, and now that we control it again, maybe we can do something with it, like flicker it, you know? Momo's Heist is kind of a weird removal spell for artifacts, but it can certainly be fun, especially if someone's running artifact creatures that we can then attack with, or if they have something that's more dangerous that we just need to get rid of, like a Cityscape Leveler or a Bolus's Citadel, something like that. We've seen Touch the Spirit Realm. It is an Oblivion Ring effect. Legend of Yangchen lets us not just remove things by exiling something that everyone gets to choose as a part of course we are part of that, but also the backside of Yangchen lets us airbend things. That's good removal as well. And finally, we have Murasa Pyromancer. This is a 3/2 human shaman ally for 4 and double red. It says whenever this creature or another ally we control enters, we may have this creature deal damage to target creature equal to the number of allies we control. Every time we give something away with Iroh, we get a trigger that lets us make an ally creature token, which means Murasa Pyromancer will trigger, count the number of allies we have, including itself and Iroh and all of our other ally tokens, and do that much damage to any creature we like. So this is repeatable removal. On a 6-drop, it's true, but very powerful for us. We have several different ally cards like this that have sort of a rally trigger, but we'll get to that soon. So that covers our removal section. We are running a single Wrath, which is Promise of Loyalty. Promise of Loyalty is a sorcery for 4 and a white that says each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control and sacrifices the rest. Vow counters, again, they don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by this card. But it does say each player chooses a creature to get that vow counter, and they sacrifice the rest of their board. Or at least the rest of their creatures. And then each of the creatures with the vow counter can't attack us or planeswalkers we can control for as long as they have vow counters on them. This includes us. So if we use this, we can maybe put a vow counter on Iroh, and then we have to sacrifice everything else, but so do all of our opponents, and everything they kept has a vow counter, and as long as they have those vow counters, they can't attack us. So probably everyone's going to keep the most valuable thing to them, every other player will, and those most valuable things can't attack us, as long as they have those vow counters. So pretty nice. All right, that covers our support sections. We're going to talk about our supplemental sections, starting with our tricks right here. So these are cards that let us sort of steal things, or steal them back, maybe is the way we want to think of it. Parting Gust, as we've seen, lets us do a slow flicker on something if we gift a tapped fish when we cast it. So that lets us take something back of ours. Touch the Spirit Realm lets us channel it to slow flicker an artifact or creature, which again is a way for us to maybe steal something back. And Legend of Yangchen lets us airbend things on her backside when we cast our second spell each turn, which is another way that we might be able to steal something back. And that's pretty nice. Momo's Heist also lets us steal something back if we really want to. And something I didn't mention before about it is this. If we cast Momo's Heist pre-combat, we can steal any artifact, which we could do whenever we cast Momo's Heist. But if it's pre-combat, we then go to combat, Iroh triggers, and we can give this away to give away whatever we stole with Momo's Heist to someone else. Which means it's an item that we don't own, unless it was something we already owned, but it is now on someone else's board, similar to what we talked about with Zidane earlier. It says, Momo's Heist says, at the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice it. We can't do that if we don't control it anymore. Which means Momo's Heist is a way for us to take an artifact, and it in conjunction with Iroh, of course, we can take someone's artifact and give it to a different player if we want to. Or we can just take it for ourselves and sacrifice it at the end step. That's fun too. So yeah, this is a way for us to steal something back if we want to. Sometimes that's relevant to us, like Karn the Betrayer is not an artifact, but Covetous Jewel is. And yeah, there's fun things we can do with this. So those are our tricks. We do have a bit of a theft section, which we've seen all of these. Momo's Heist lets us steal an artifact, Zidane lets us steal a creature, and Coveted Jewel lets us steal the jewel itself, because all we have to do is attack whatever opponent controls it with a creature and have that creature not be blocked. So that's fun. Just worth noting, we do have other cards with these tags in the considering section, but just like, yeah, if you like these kind of theft effects, if you want to feel like you're stealing the presents at a White Elephant exchange, this is the way you do it. Next, I mentioned we have the allies section. Here it is. So we've seen the Murasa Pyromancer. Let's talk about Firemantle Mage. This is a 2/2 human shaman ally for 2 and a red with Rally. Rally means when this or another ally you control enters, do a thing. So that's why we talked about the Pyromancer. When it or another ally enters, you do a thing, which is do damage, have this do damage to a creature equal to the number of allies we control. Firemantle Mage, whenever this or an ally we control enters, all of our creatures, even our non-allies, just creatures we control, gain menace until end of turn. So this is great for us to have some evasion, and menace is strong. Like a whole board full of menace creatures, there's been very few times when I've attacked with a pretty good board where everything has menace that something doesn't get through, which might help us get back our coveted jewel. Retreat to Emeria is a non-creature card, but it's in this section because it's 3 and a white for an enchantment with landfall. Whenever a land we control enters, we can make a 1/1 white core ally creature token, which empowers all of our other ally things and lets us let's just have more tokens in our deck that doesn't have as many creatures as often we do. Or we can give all of our creatures +1/+1 until end of turn, which is also pretty nice. But making ally tokens every time we play lands is pretty good. Next we have Kazul Warlord. 4 and a red for a 3/3 Minotaur Warrior ally that says when it or another ally we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on each ally we control. Each! That means the Warlord, when it enters, so it's a 4 and a red for a 4/4 really, because it comes in, it puts a counter on itself. That means Iroh, that means all of our ally tokens, whether they were made by Iroh or by Retreat to Emeria, the Warlord likes it all. And we're going to get those counters every time Iroh does his thing at the start of combat, because we're going to make another ally token, which will trigger the Warlord. Next we have Resolute Blade Master. Awesome, awesome art. 3, a red and a white for a 2/2 human soldier ally with Rally. Whenever this creature or another ally we control enters, creatures we control gain double strike until end of turn. This is already good when we see it on Duelist's Heritage. The ability to put it on every one of our creatures, yeah, that's just solid. And then finally we have Appa the Vigilant. This is from the Day of Black Sun scene box. 5 and double white for a 6/6 legendary bison ally. So this is an ally. Triggers all of our other rally triggers. Appa has flying and vigilance, and whenever Appa or another ally we control enters, including those tokens, including Iroh, all of our creatures get +1/+1 and gain flying and vigilance until end of turn. A lot of value here, but it is a 7 mana creature, so yeah, worth playing. So that covers our allies section. Let's take a look at our tokens, all the different ways that we can make tokens in this deck, and we've seen all but one of them. So Idol of Oblivion, it cares about tokens, it lets us draw cards from it, but it can make that 10/10 Eldrazi if we want. Staff of the Storyteller comes in, also cares about tokens, but it does also make a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying when it comes in. Doomed Artisan makes these very strange, very silly sculpture artifact creatures. Seems fun. Tempt with Bunnies gives us at least one 1/1 white rabbit, and we might make 4 of them and get a card for each one, as does each opponent get 1 and a card if they choose to. Yes Man, when Yes Man leaves the battlefield, whether it's from being flickered or dying or whatever, we get a tapped 1/1 soldier for each quest counter that was on it. A Crow and Horse, whoever controls it, it's not going to be us, is giving everyone else a 1/1 white soldier creature token at the start of their upkeep. Retreat to Emeria lets us make a 1/1 core ally whenever we have landfall. And finally, we have a Room from Duskmourn. The way this works is this is a split card that is an enchantment. It is, we either cast one side, which is called a door, or the other side, and it's that on the stack. So if we cast Dollmaker's Shop, we're paying 1 and a white for an enchantment called Dollmaker's Shop, and when it enters, it will only have this side unlocked, it's called. This other door will be locked, meaning we treat this card like it's only got these characteristics, which is Dollmaker's Shop, 1 and a white. Whenever 1 or more non-toy creatures we control attack a player, we make a 1/1 toy artifact creature token. And then when one half of this is unlocked, we can, at sorcery speed, pay the casting cost of the other side and unlock that as well. And when we do, now both sides are in effect. So if we were to pay 4 and double white while Dollmaker Shop is in play, we can unlock Porcelain Gallery, which says creatures we control have base power and toughness, each equal to the number of creatures we control. So if we have 10 creatures, all of our creatures are base power and toughness 10-10, even our tokens. So we are able to cast Porcelain Gallery first, have it enter, and then unlock the Dollmaker Shop later if we want. It can be on the same turn if we want to, but yeah, that's how rooms work. You cast one half of it, and you unlock the other half once the first half is in play. So pretty nice as a way for us to make these toys, but also as a nice finisher for us to make all of our stuff enormous. That covers our token section. Let's look at more ways that we can pump things up. So we just saw Porcelain Gallery, how it can give all of our creatures base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures we control. Appa can give all of our creatures +1/+1, flying and vigilance whenever it or an ally we control enters. Kazul Warlord puts counters on each of our allies whenever it or an ally we control enters. Noble Heritage, of course, at the start of our upkeep, and when our commander enters, as long as Noble Heritage was already in play, we get to put 2/1/1 counters on one of our creatures, as does each opponent, if they wish to. Parting Gust can flicker something, and if it does, it comes back with a 1/1 counter. Retreat to Emeria, if we don't want to make an ally when we have landfall, we can give all of our creatures a temporary +1/+1 until end of turn. And Cathar's Crusade is 3 and double white for an enchantment that says whenever a creature we control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. If we have a lot of creatures in play, this is really annoying. We need a lot of dice, but it's totally worth it because everything keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The same way that whenever Iroh's ability resolves, the Kazul Warlord is putting a counter on all of our allies. Well, whenever those allies enter, it's going to trigger the Warlord, but also Cathar's Crusade, which is going to put a counter on each of our creatures, not just the allies. So pretty sweet. That is our pump section. Let's talk about payoffs. These are cards that reward us for doing the things we were already doing. Idol of Oblivion and Staff of the Storyteller both give us ways to draw cards whenever we make tokens, which we're doing a lot of. Cathar's Crusade gives us, even more so than that Minotaur, the ability to put counters on all of our creatures whenever we get any creatures coming in. Zidane rewards us with treasure every time an opponent gains control of our permanents, which is going to be every one of our turns. Abzan Falconer is 2 and a white for a 2/3 human soldier with Outlast for a single white, meaning at sorcery speed, we can pay a white and tap it to put a counter on it. That's fine. But more importantly, each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has flying. So this is a way to make so much of our board, if not the whole thing, evasive. The tokens that Iroh makes always come in with a counter on them. I guess it's possible that they might not if the first time we make one, Iroh gives away a token and maybe there's an Elish Norn in play and the token dies immediately. I don't know. That's not even reasonable either because state-based actions aren't checked. In any case, we're going to have creatures with counters on them, and Abzan Falconer makes them fly. And that's worth having a 3-mana 2/3 in play that we can make into a flyer itself for a single white. Finally, we have Resourceful Defense, or finally for this section I should say, originally from Streets of New Capenna Commander. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment that says whenever a permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on target permanent you control. It doesn't have to be another creature, even if they're like +1/+1 counters. We just put them on another kind of permanent and it doesn't matter that they're there. But if we have like story counters or other unknown like counters that don't have an actual meaning, we can put them on one of our things and it doesn't matter that they're there. It's not hurting anything. But particularly, we're looking at all of the 1/1 counters that we have on our tokens when we're looking at Resourceful Defense. We can put those counters on a land if we want. We can put them on Resourceful Defense itself if we want to. But when we do that, we have the ability to pay 4 and a white and move any number of counters from target permanent we control onto a second target permanent you control. So maybe we've gotten a bunch of counters on Resourceful Defense because we had to do a board wipe with all of our token creatures that had counters on them. So then we pay 4 and a white to move all of those counters onto one of our creatures or one of our other permanents. We could just have them hang out. If somebody goes to try and remove Resourceful Defense, I suppose we could activate it in response and move those counters to a land. Who knows? But we have cool things we can do with this, and it's our sort of very cheap version of the Ozolith when we don't want to pay for the Ozolith. So there we go. That's our payoff section. Let's take a look at the ways we're getting evasion in this deck. We've seen them all already. Abzan Falconer gives all of our creatures with 1/1 counters flying. Firemental Mage has a rally trigger. Whenever it or an ally enters, all of our creatures gain menace. And Appa, whenever whenever Appa or another ally we control enters, all of our creatures get +1/+1, vigilance, and flying until end of turn. So 2 ways for us to fly, 1 way for us to be menacing. Maybe we get all 3 at once. So flying and menace, and double flying. So yeah, that's our evasion section. The last section of spells we have is our protection section. And I believe we've seen all of these, yeah. So Bloodthirsty Blade protects us because it means that whatever creature we equip it to, or attach it to, I should say, is goaded. It can't attack us. Noble Heritage, if one of our opponents decides to put the 2/1/1 counters on one of their creatures, we have protection from that opponent until our next turn. Overencumbered makes it harder for the player that is enchanted by this to attack at all. Parting Gust protects us somehow? Why is this in this section? Great question. Am I crazy? Oh, I know. It protects us because it can flicker something. So it doesn't protect us so much as one of our creatures. We can block with one of our creatures, and if the attacker doesn't have trample, or if then we can do the flicker effect with Parting Gust to protect that creature. It doesn't die. The same is true if someone tries to target the creature with a removal spell, that kind of thing. That's also why Touch the Spirit Realm is in this section, because flickering things can protect them. 9 lives is a risky way of protecting ourselves for at least 1 turn cycle, but maybe worth doing. And Promise of Loyalty, of course, protects us because it wipes the board, and everything that's left behind can't attack us for as long as it has that vow counter on it. So that covers all of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now. We're running 18 basic lands, 6 mountains and 12 plains. That is a pretty good mix for what we're running in this deck. We're more white than red, and we could probably even go down fewer on mountains, but I didn't want to because I want to make sure we definitely have red available to us so that we can cast Iroh on turn 3 and go ahead and get things started. Even if all we do on turn 3 is cast Iroh and give away the food that he makes in order to make a 2/2 token ally, that's still pretty good. We're running Glittering Massif. This is a bicycle land, meaning it is a mountain and plains. It has these basic land types. It comes in tapped, but we can cycle it for 2 generic mana, meaning while it's in our hand, we can pay 2 and discard it to draw a card. So early on, it's a good dual land for us. It's typed even, which is helpful. And later on, if we don't need it in our hand, we can cycle it and draw a card. We're running a bounce land, which is Boros Garrison. Bounce lands enter tapped, and when they do, we return a land we control to its owner's hand. Meaning if this is the first land we play, we have to bounce it back to our hand, so we don't want to do that. So what we normally do with this is we tap some of our other lands and cast a spell, then we play the Garrison, it comes in tapped, and we bounce one of our lands that we've tapped for mana already to our hand. We at least got the mana out of it. The reason we're going through all this rigmarole is that the Boros Garrison taps for a red and a white. It's not red or white, it's 2 mana. And so even though we're losing a land in play by having it go back to our hand when this bounces it, this is making 2 mana when it untaps, so we're not behind on mana, and we definitely can make our land drop next turn since we just put a land back in our hand from play. Next, we're running Clifftop Retreat. This is a check land, meaning it taps for red or white, and it comes in tapped unless we control a mountain or plains. As you saw, we're running 18 basics. 18 basics, there we go. But we also have 2 typed duels. Glittering Massif is a mountain and a plains. So as long as this is in play, even if we don't have any basics in play, Clifftop Retreat will come in untapped because it only cares about the types. If you wanted to upgrade Clifftop Retreat, you could probably do Sundown Pass, which is a slow land. It comes in untapped as long as you have 2 other lands or more already in play. So that's maybe more likely to come in untapped than Clifftop Retreat, but we are running 20 cards on our deck that have basic types. So Clifftop Retreat is going to be fine as well and costs a lot less than Sundown Pass. We're running 2 filter lands. Sun-Scorched Divide is an untapped land that if we pay a mana into it and tap it, it makes a red and a white. So this does produce 2 mana, but we have to pay 1 into it. So we're sort of tapping probably another land and then this. So we've tapped 2 lands and we're only getting 2 mana, so it's not really accelerating us. But it is fixing our mana, and that's pretty good. It just is worth noting, Sun-Scorched Divide cannot tap for mana unless we have mana to put into it. As opposed to Rugged Prairie, which comes in untapped and taps for colorless. Or if we pay a red or white into it, we can tap it for double red, double white, or one of each. That's pretty sweet. So this can tap for mana on its own, albeit colorless, and can make our mana fixed however we need it to. But I don't want to say this is strictly better, because even though this can do all that, Sun-Scorched Divide can be activated with colorless mana. So if we have like a Soul Ring, we can pay a colorless mana into this for the generic mana cost and make colored mana. If we only have a Soul Ring and Rugged Prairie, we can't make colored mana at all because Rugged Prairie has to filter red or white to make colored mana. So, but still very good. Both excellent cards and worth playing. We're running 4 fixing lands. Command Tower comes in untapped and makes 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, just like Arcane Signet. So this is an untapped duel. It's not typed, but it doesn't have to be. It's pretty great. Path of Ancestry is next. It is a tapped duel because it has the same text on it as Command Tower. It makes red or white for us. However, in addition, if we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. So in our deck, we are running 12 creatures that are either humans or allies or citizens, which are the types of that Iroh has, including Iroh himself. So if we cast Iroh with the Path of Ancestry, he of course shares creature types with himself, so we get to scry. If we cast any of our other allies or any of our other humans, we get to scry from that as well. There aren't any other citizens besides Iroh, but 12 cards is plenty good for a what is essentially otherwise a tap land that makes our 2 colors. We're running Myriad Landscape, which is a tap land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic lands that share a land type. So in this deck, 2 basic mountains or 2 basic plains. Then we put them on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. So while this is slow, because we're getting 2 lands tapped, we're having to pay into this and tap it and sack it, so we can't tap it for mana in that same turn, and this comes in tapped itself. That's a lot to go through to get 2 lands in play, but it is turning our 1 land drop into 2 lands. So it is ramp, albeit slowly. A little faster ramp, just not early, is Temple of the False God. I know not everyone likes this card, but I do. It's an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana, so it's a soul land. Except we can only activate it if we control 4 lands or more besides it, because we have to have 5, but it counts itself. So if this is in your opening hand with only 1 other land, you probably don't want to keep that hand. Go ahead and mulligan. But if you get this on turn 4, and you can get into this, and especially in this deck where we're running a sufficient number of lands and an awful lot of card advantage, Temple of the False God is probably going to be online for us when we need it, and it's 1 land that makes 2 mana. That's acceleration. It's great. We're running Battlefield Forge, which is a pain land. This is just like that Talisman we were playing earlier, Talisman of Conviction. It comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can have it do a damage to us so that we can tap it for red or white. Everything I said about the Talisman of Conviction is true about this too. It's totally worth running as an untapped duel, or just an untapped source of mana for us. We are running a pathway, because I like the pathways. This is Needleverge Pathway. It comes in untapped, taps for red mana, or we can play it on its backside as Pillarverge Pathway, and it comes in untapped and taps for red, or for white rather. We can't change this once it's in play, but what we can do, if it happens to work, is let's say early on we need white mana, so we play it as Pillarverge Pathway. Then we get the Boros Garrison, which is a bounce land. We play that and bounce the Pillarverge Pathway. Well, now it's back in our hand, and we can play it again as Needleverge Pathway if we want to. We can change it that way. Just a nice little trick that doesn't come up that often, but if you're running a pathway and a bounce land, it's something worth keeping in mind. We have Fury Calm Snarl. This is a reveal land, meaning when as it enters, if we have a mountain or a plains card in our hand, we can reveal that we do. And if we don't, this comes in tapped, but if we do, it comes in untapped, and it taps for red or white. So it's kind of like a check land in that way, just worth looking at it sort of similarly. I don't think it's quite as good as the check lands, but it's nice to be able to have in case we need it. And we've got, again, 20 of our cards in our deck are either mountains or plains. We're running Temple of Triumph. This is a scry land. It comes in tapped. When it does, we scry 1, and it taps for red or white. So not as repeatable scry as Path of Ancestry, but a guaranteed scry, and so that's pretty good. And if we wanted to upgrade this, we could upgrade to Elegant Parlor, the Surveil land. That would be pretty good. Just like we could upgrade our filter lands into, or even our pain land, I should say, into, what's it called? Sacred Foundry, the shock land, so that we're only taking damage once if we wanted to come in untapped, and we don't have to worry about filtering. Just something to think about. We're also running a Tango land. This is Radiant Summit. It is a mountain and a plains, just like our bicycle land, the Glittering Massif. But we can't cycle it. Instead, it comes in tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. So there is a chance, we've got 18 basics in the deck, that if we've got 2 of them in play when we play the Summit, this is a untapped duel. That's pretty great. Being able to get this in that way sounds pretty nice to me. Finally, we have 6 utility lands. I don't do a lot of land destruction, as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Emergency Eject, but I do like to run Demolition Field. It's nice to have just the 1 or so answers to a problematic basic like Glacial Chasm or Maze of Ith, something that would otherwise stop our game plan or keep our opponent safe or advance their game plan in a way that we want to be able to interact with. So Demolition Field comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls. That land's controller then gets to search for a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped and shuffle. And so do we. So neither they nor we are down a land. We just replace their non-basic and our Demolition Field with basics, assuming both players have basics left in their library. So yeah, just one way to answer something that might be problematic for us, and it's even nice that those lands that we get come in untapped. We can use them right away. Fountain Port is here just to be a way for us to have some options and to have some mana sinks if we need them. So it comes in untapped and taps for colorless. We can pay 2 and tap and sack a token, which we have lots of tokens in our deck, to draw a card if we want to. Usually the tokens that we're making are our allies, so we don't probably want to sacrifice those just to turn it into card draw, but sometimes needs must. We can also pay 3 and tap and pay a life to make a 1/1 fish. That could be nice. That's something we can give away with Iroh. That's something that we can also next turn sacrifice to draw a card. If we've got a bunch of mana sitting around and we're really dying for a card advantage, that's possible. Or if we've got a bunch of mana lying around and we don't have a lot to use it for, we can pay for and tap Fountain Port to make a treasure token, which lets us sort of bank that mana. Or we can give the treasure token away. That's also nice. Next up is, obviously, the Jasmine Dragon Tea Shop. We've got to put this in our Iroh Tea Master deck. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or it taps for 1 mana of any color, but only to cast ally spells or activate abilities of ally sources. We have several allies in our deck, including our commander, so this is an untapped land that lets us play our commander with our mana fixed properly for it, and that's pretty sweet. And if we're sitting here with Fountain Port and wanting to make treasures, if we need to use our mana, we can use the Jasmine Dragon Tea Shop by paying 5 and tapping it to make an ally creature token. Just add some more allies to us. Sounds pretty good. Mikokoro, Center of the Sea, is next. This is a legendary land that comes in untapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 2 and tap it, and each player draws a card. Just here to help out more with our sort of Season of Giving feelings. Mystifying Maze is next, and I'm using the Edge of Eternity's Stellar Sights printing just because it's inexpensive and cool. It comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap it to exile target attacking creature and opponent controls, and at the beginning of the next end step, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So if we've given away a creature, and our opponent decides to attack with it, we can steal it back. This is another one of our tricks. Or if that's not one of our creatures, we can just get it out of combat, get it lost in the maze, and it'll come back under their control during the next end step. But what's especially nice about this is we don't have to use this when we're the ones being attacked. It just has to be a creature that our opponent controls that's doing the attacking, but it can be attacking one of our opponents. That's totally fine. We can say, hey, I can save you from that creature attacking you. What will you give me in the process? We just exchange gifts. And on the opposite side of that is Rogue's Passage, an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap it, and target creature can't be blocked this turn. This is likely to be a way for us to close things out, but we can also, like I mentioned with Mystifying Maze, use this on opponent's creatures to help that attacker, or the attacking player, get in without being blocked. We do want to do that after they declare that creature as an attacker, rather than saying, oh yeah, I'll make your creature unblockable, and then having them say, okay, go to combat, use that unblockable creature to attack you. So it requires a little bit of trust, but we're willing to do it, and it's a nice way to do it to get a little bit of goodwill, which is also seasonally appropriate. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Avatar Commander decks every Thursday through mid-January when the Lorwyn Eclipsed set drops. So let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific Avatar Commander or deck style. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be notified when I post one of my many, many videos. Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. And remember, magic is fun. You should play more Magic.